Right, we're on Keilim Perek Yud Zayin, Mishnah Yud Aleph, 11th Mishnah, the 17th chapter of Masechet Keilim. We're continuing to talk about different midot, different measurements, whether they're objective or subjective. Really, really interesting. Says the Mishnah, Yesha Amru b'midad daka. Yesha Amru, very interesting language, weird language. Some of the rabbis said, Yesha Amru, some rabbis said, b'midad daka. Okay, midad daka means you use the smallest measurement. I'll explain in a minute what this means. Dak, small. Midot alach vayavesh, liquid and dry measurements. Shi'uran bi'italki, you measure them the Italian measurements. Zu midbarit, and that's the measurements of the midbar. So the Bartanura says, okay, the measurements of midbar are called midad daka because they're midbaria. The three kinds of measurements are midbarit, Yerushalmit, and Siporit. So they had these. We all know they have these interesting this system of measurement of kaf and ephah. Okay, and there were three actually. So it's like really, really confusing because you always have to know which set of measurements are you using. Are you using the old, the medium, or the new? Well, you know, and the measurements were all different. You're using the midbarit, Yerushalmit, and Siporit. That in the midbar, the ancient, that's how they started that a measurement in the midbar. When they get to Yerushalayim, right, then much later on, they added to it, and then they added to it again. And the midbarit is the smallest one. So I found this incredible chart that we're going to come back to. And this is from a rabbi named Rabbi Simon Wolf, swwolf.daf. So he's got all these, I don't know how this came up, but it's great. A sa'ah in the midbar was 144 eggs worth. Okay, and they added a fifth to that, added a plus 1/6, I think, times 1.2. A sa'ah in Yerushalmi is 172 beitzim, and a sa'ah tzipori, they kept increasing. It was like, like inflation. They kept inflating the measurements, and a sa'ah in tzipori was 207.36 beitzim. And so here you have, so Simon Wolf did this great PowerPoint documents. You see, so that some Chazal said, no, when we do measurements for halacha, we're using the sa'ah midbarit. Okay, we're using the smallest measurement that we have. We're going to come back to this chart for here in a second. Okay, V'yesha, Musam said, Hakol lefi mashu adam. Okay, no, it all depends on the person. It's subjective. There's no objective amount for different measurements. For example, the Kohen, when he was doing a korban mincha, a grain offering, he had to do kmitza, scooping it out. We learned that in Menachot. Okay, so he had to do kmitza. Hachofen ektoret, melo chofnav. He takes it, the chofen, the Kohen gadol on Yom Kippur, when he was putting the ketoret, the incense on the fire, on the coals, he had to melo chofnav. He had to fill his hands. So how much is that? A cup? Like is it like a cup's worth, or it's his hand? So that's a machloket. So some say, these said it was his size. Hashotah k'mulog mulugmav b'yom kippur. Right. This is a really interesting question. A person, in order to be violating the prohibition of drinking on Yom Kippur, has to be mulog lugmav, cheekful. How much is a cheekful? My cheek is different than your cheek, or is it a standard amount? Or kimizon shtei seudot le'eruv. If you want to put out what's called an eruv tchumin. For example, so I live in Yad Binyamin, I want to walk all the way to Gedera. So now you can do it. But you say, I want to walk to, to Yesodot. So Yesodot might be more than two. I'm not allowed. I have a Tchum Shabbat of 2,000 square amot. If you want to know more about this, learn all the Masechet Eruvin. I'm not going to give you charts right now. But I need, so in order to do that, I have to put an Eruv Chatzeh, an Eruv Tchumin. What to do is, I have to change my locus, my area, and the way I do that, I can shift my 2,000 amot. All right, I'll give you a chart. I'll have to show you. Here we are. This is the example that I gave. So here I'm in Yad Binyamin, and I want to get to Gedera. So Yad Binyamin, I can go 2,000 amot in any direction, but I can't get all the way to Gedera. But if I put my eruv here in a sense, I can shift my 2,000 amot. I can move it all the way. I can get from Yad Binyamin all the way to Gedera. And that's, in order to put an eruv, in a sense, really was I reestablish myself. I say, this is where I am setting my place for Shabbat. That's where I'm going to do it. And that's called an eruv. So in order to do that, the eruv is actually, it's not the wires, it's the food. And in order to have food, the food I have to have is mazon shtei seudot be'eruv. The food I need is the food for 2 seudot. So then the question is, how much food? Mazono l'chol avalo l'shabbat, Rab Meir. Rab Meir says it's meals, weekday meals. Rab Yehuda says no, l'shabbat v'lo l'chol. It's not weekday meals. It's Shabbat meals. That's the amount. And the Mishnah says elu ve'elu mitkavnim lahakel. Each one says it wants to do less. So the Bartanura says, how could it be less? Okay, because here we are. Because he says, the first opinion says that why is it mizonot l'chol? Okay, because basim tavshile, because on Shabbat you have better foods and a person eats more. Okay, and the other opinion says no, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, Shabbat and not chol, because you have 3 meals on Shabbat and not 2, therefore you have less every meal. I think it also depends on where you live. When I was in America, you didn't eat less every meal. It was definitely Rabbi Meir. Whereas if you're a person who's trying to eat normally, if you're going to eat more meals, you try to eat less at each meal. They want to be lenient. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says no, it's a standard measurement. Shtei yadot lekikar mishalosh lakav. Okay, let's say, okay, you have a kikar. Kikar is a loaf of bread, where 3 loaves of bread are made out of a kav. So every loaf of bread is made out of, 3 loaves made out of kav. So every loaf of bread is made out of 1/3 of a kav, and it's 2/3 of that. I'm pretty sure Rabbi Wolf has that picture here. Shtei adot mikikar kikar lakav. 1 kav is 9 seudot. Why? Okay, you say shtei adot, 2/3 of kikar is 2 seudot. So how much is that? So he says, he figures out. Okay, shtei adot, a kav is 24 beitzim. So shtei adot kikar, you'll figure it out, is 5 1/3 beitzim. Okay, 2/3, because a shlish of a kav is 24 beitzim. So if you take 24 beitzim, you have 3 loaves out of that. Each one is 8. 2/3 of that is 5 1/3 beitzim. You can do the math later. You can search here for this document if you want to see it yourself. Worthwhile to see. The Mishnah finishes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Baruch Omer, mikikar bepundion, me'arba se'im besela. Okay, this Mishnah also appears in Eruvin, which is why Rabbi Wolf's chart is from Eruvin. He says, no, a kikar if you make a loaf, okay, that it costs a pundion, when you could buy 4 se'ah of grain for a sela. This was his first chart. Okay, a pundion is 2 pundion is a ma'ah. So we all know. I always feel like when we do this, it's like Harry Potter money, because it's strange for us. Okay, 1 kav 2 pundion. So a kikar bepundion is half a kav. A pundion is 2 seudot. So it's made with half a kav of grain. But the Gemara says it's not really half a kav. Half a kav of grain would be wholesale. So then it's a machloket later. You'll see each one designs how much of, what percentage do you have to take off for costs of baking. Okay, so the Gazi says at the end, it's 6 kibbetzim. Whereas, so the first opinion we said was 5 1/3 beitzim. That's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yochanan ben Baruch, it says, no, it's not 5 1/3, it's 6 beitzim. That's the amount you need in order to make your eruv tchumin. All right, we'll stop here. Dedicate our learning to memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kavan. But we left with a really fascinating question. Is it objective or subjective? Is it my cheek or the average cheek for the amount of drinking Yom Kippur? Make it a great day.